Welcome to the Calsoft Podcast series. This is your host Mark Rodrigues. I have with me today Sagar Abhyankar. Welcome, Sagar.
Hey, hi Mark, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to have you here, Sagar.
Likewise, thank you so much.
So Sagar and me are going to be talking today about an automation approach using Agile. A quick introduction on Sagar. He is a Scrum Alliance certified Scrum Master and a certified manager of software testing from QAI Global Institute. He has over 10 plus years of experience in testing and delivering world-class products that were developed using the waterfall model and agile methodologies. He's now a project manager here at Calsoft with us, and he focuses on QA solutions. So I'm going to quickly just jump into the podcast. Sagar, could you quickly tell us what is the agile methodology?
Okay, so the conventional way of doing the product development was waterfall. One of the techniques, one of the execution approaches that were being used, wherein one phase used to get over and the another phase used to start. One of the disadvantages of that particular model was that if you are if you start with requirement gathering, analysis, feasibility, then you start coding, and then it boils down to testing.
Right.
And maybe at that point in time, the decision makers, the product owners, start feeling that there's something that needs to be changed. Then the amount of time spent on each cycle was humongous. Right. So you had to go back and come down along the entire phases and the entire life cycle. What Agile does is Agile tells you that do everything in the first go at same point in time in parallel. So what you can do in Agile is you can develop, you can design, you can test, and the beauty of Agile is that your customer is actually involved in the entire product development life cycle.
Okay.
So in waterfall, what earlier used to happen is the product used to get built and then the product used to get shipped to the customer, and then he used to get to see what he demanded for. So it was something like he asked for oranges and people used to end up making mangoes, and the testing used to deliver something else.
Right.
But here in Agile, what happens is the customer is also involved in the product development life cycle.
Okay.
So it's more, I would like to believe that it's more of a partnership than a customer vendor relationship where everybody is involved in developing the product hand in hand and together. So that's what Agile does. So what Agile also does is it gives the customer a first hand feel of the product. Then he had to wait for like months to see what's going into the product and then come up with his own suggestions or feedback or enhancements. But here in Agile, he gets to see the product. Every feature is being developed and every feature needs to be considered as a shippable feature to be put on shelf or on store.
Okay. So obviously this has to be automated, right?
Correct.
So give us a cheat code on why, when, and how do you automate?
So firstly, you need to understand that do you really want to automate or not? So everybody these days goes by the buzzword of automation. You just want to automate. But before even jumping into the pool of automation or giving a thought about automation, you really need to think whether your project really needs automation or not, because automation requires huge amount of investment and the returns come at a later stage. So they don't come right from the day one. So you have to invest, you have to find right kind of people, right kind of skill set, right kind of technology,
Right.
good amount of experience and expertise into doing what needs to be automated, and then take it ahead for automation. Like I can give you one example. If there is a test case which says there are only 4 test steps in it, but you are going to just keep executing it every day, maybe more than once in a day,
Right.
then it's worth going for automation.
Right.
It's just 4 steps. You just need to execute it every now and then. So it's a superb candidate for automation which can be picked for automation. But if that same test case which is having 4 test steps is getting executed maybe once a month or
Right.
twice in a month, then probably it is not a candidate for automation, because the amount of time you would spend in automating it and versus against a person actually executing it would be much more faster than you spending time in automating it. So you have to take a call as to what you want to automate, when you want to automate, and basically why you want to automate.
Okay, fair enough. So how do you say we could inject or introduce test automation in this methodology?
So there have been 2 approaches conventionally. One is the parallel approach, which you can follow in Agile, and one is the lagging approach. So lagging approach is something that many people, many companies have been following. until now that there is a entry criteria for automation, and once the product is around 75-80% stable, once many things on the UI and stuff doesn't change that much, then you pick up that stuff for automation.
Okay.
In parallel approach, what I feel what can be done is when you are in Agile, okay, and you have your own objects and properties defined, you can start at least designing the initial framework. Okay, so based on that framework, you can start automating it parallelly. You can start your test automation design work in sync with your other activities, other development activities, and it can actually help when the product is actually ready. So you can automate as you go along rather than waiting for the product to be ready and then investing time, money, people, energy in automating and then getting results out of it. So I feel in modern days world, you can automate in parallel when you are in Agile. If you know exactly what are the objects that are being used, what are the properties that are being used. Of course, Agile talks about change. So there are possibilities that some things might change. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt here. But that's the beauty of Agile, that it allows you to do many things at the same go. Many people can participate in it, and you can actually see your product grow and evolve.
Right. So Sagar, what is your take on the objective of approaches?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there have been two approaches which I have outlined them as the parallel approach and the lagging approach. So what lagging approach used to do is you develop a product, you test it, you again test it, and then once it meets a stability, once it starts meeting the acceptance criteria for automation, then you pick it up for automation and then start focusing on functional automation.
Absolutely.
The second approach that I've been advocating here is the parallel approach, which talks about picking up the test cases, identifying the test cases which are candidates for automation, identifying the scenarios which are candidates for automation, talking with the development team, understanding at design point what are the objects and properties and stuffs which are being used on the GUI, on the UI, and start designing the framework right from the word go. So you don't wait for the product to be ready, but parallelly you start your test automation framework design in the same phase where the product is being developed.
Okay, so this is a complete change from the conventional automation approach, you say?
Absolutely. So this is a complete change. The advantage of doing this is you don't have to wait for the product to be ready. You don't have to wait because the objective of automation is when do you introduce automation basically is when you have your own when you have monotonous work, when you have repeated tasks, when you keep doing the same work again and again, when there is regression that's required, and you can't have too many people doing the same task.
Right.
So why not have a system in place that does the same task for you which otherwise people would do, and utilize the same time that people would invest in doing some out of the box testing or come up with some different types of scenarios which you can't automate. Right. As it is said, you can't automate everything.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's the beauty of having the parallel approach in Agile.
Okay, perfect. So Sagar, you've been talking about two approaches here, the parallel approach and the lagging approach, right? What do you think are the biggest differences, or what's the major difference between these two?
So yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, in the lagging approach you have to wait for your product to be stable, because from automation, functional automation, or per se performance or performance testing perspective, there are entry and exit criteria when you should start automating and when you should stop. So that's what happens in your lagging approach, where you have to actually wait for the product to be stabilized. Your test team maybe says, okay, it's 80% stable and okay, now it's a candidate for automation, and that's where you actually start thinking about automating the test cases. The difference lies in the parallel approach, where you actually start automation, you start giving a thought right from the day the product is being developed. You have your objects in place, you have their properties defined, and then you kick off your framework, you start designing the framework, and so by the time the product is actually ready per sprint in Agile, you can actually start automating those alongside your manual testing as well.
Okay, makes sense. So you've been telling us the pros of the parallel approach. Are there any pros of the lagging approach? Is it used anywhere?
Mostly yes. So lagging approach, the pros are the the application or the product, it's stable. So
Yeah.
amount of rework that automation engineers have to actually spend in changing their objects or changing their framework is very less as compared to the parallel approach. So in lagging approach, what happens is you have your application ready, you have it's quite stabilized, and then you take it ahead from there.
Okay, so that means each organization or each project could define what sort of approach they want to use.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's based on your objective of automation. So as I mentioned earlier, automation should not be done because it's the buzzword in the market now, and we do automation. What you need to think about is, do you really need to automate or not, and what is it that you're going to gain after automating? And then maybe once you have both the answers ready, you maybe can drill it down further to understand, okay, now whether I should be going for a lagging approach or a parallel approach.
Okay, perfect. Understood. So lastly, Sagar, then what is the roadmap for the automation approach using Agile?
So as I mentioned, the roadmap is, as I mentioned in the parallel approach, many people have actually started thinking about it now. That why waste time till the product is ready or meets the entry criteria for functional automation? Why can't we at least start thinking about it right when the product is under development? And why wait? Why wait? So nobody likes to wait. So that's the bottom line. But again, as I said, people have to, so decision makers, executors have to actually choose what suits best to their business, what is the business case they would like to advocate and propose, and based on that, then you should take a call whether they should go for a lagging approach or the parallel approach, which is being used in Agile way.
Okay, perfect. So that's a wrap from us on today's discussion. Sagar, it was a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
Hey, likewise, Mark. Thanks so much.
For our listeners, we would like to hear your feedback on anything that you may have for us. If you need to reach us, you can write to us at marketing@calsoftinc.com. Thank you.